This episode is brought to you by Chapstick. Chapstick, wear it on your lips. College basketball is wrapping up, and we got a fully loaded 1 hour episode. That's right, 1 hour episode, Division One, Division Two, Division Three. We've spent the last 2 weeks preparing this show, and not only that, but we have our first ever bracketology in the NCAA and in the women's NCAA as well. But that episode will not be until this upcoming Friday. And not only that, but the reason why I was out for about 2 weeks was due to schooling and that sort of stuff. As I said, I'm finishing my senior year. Hopefully things can be better now and be more on track as we go into March, and we'll do episodes. This is the Super Bowl edition as well. So we'll talk about some teams, maybe compare them to the Chiefs and 49ers who are playing in this game on Sunday. And not only that, but we have an extensive talk about Division 2, Division 3, and NJCAA basketball, all jam-packed on this show. But first, we're going to start with Division 1 basketball, Caitlin Clark, and that sort of stuff. So if you guys were going to be listening to this episode thinking, oh, boy, Braydon's not going to cover the NJCAA or the NAIA, well, I'm going to get to that later in the show. So, welcome back to the February 9th edition of the Cinderella Slippers podcast with your host, Braydyn Bear, after this.
And they are stunned. Dribble drive kick. 10 seconds to go. Here comes the play. Whitman at the free throw line. Jumper. They are riding a Cinderella wave. 67, 64, 4 seconds left. They don't like the foul, remember. Ivy for the tie. Off the rim, and it's over. This miracle run continues for Steve. You believe it? For just the second time ever, a 16 beats a 1.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Cinderella Slippers podcast, the 11th, or I think this is the 10th or 11th episode, actually, the 10th or 11th episode of the Cinderella Slippers broadcast. And no, this podcast is not brought to you by Chapstick. That's just a fake sponsor. I wanted you guys to know that right now. Just remember that we will be having a ton of Substack newsletters printed out and actually maybe even copied going into the beginning of this year. We have had 2 weeks off because of schooling. I am finishing my time in college, so it's been really jam-packed difficult. I will say this, I saw a video from a guy that talked about college basketball, and he even said the same thing. You're not really paying attention to it much when you're so busy and stuff that you can't even pay attention to whatever else is going on. But I would say that it's been a long journey. The last about a month or so. I mean, the week I was supposed to record this, my mom sprained her wrist, and so I had to really help her out with that. Almost broke it, but so almost broke her wrist. But we had that, so we had to push it back another week, then push it back another week, and now we're finally here with schooling and everything such as that. It's been quite the roller coaster, but hey, we're back. And we're back on the newsletter train as well. That has not gone well because the last ones I had posted were back in late December, and I had a lot of content that I could have talked about in January from all the upsets and Cinderellas, but I didn't because of the transitions of schools and that my dismissal previously. And not only that, but getting back into the swings of IU and stuff because I thought, am I going to be coming back here? Am I not going to be coming back here? But now it's completely solved, and I'm officially back at Indiana University for good, and this is my second to last semester at the university. So I'm really just honing in on all of the studying that I need to do, honing in on everything I've needed to accomplish these last 4 years and get done by the 4.5 year, that December. So you'll be hearing this again probably as I said, we are not going to be taking the days off. I'll talk about stories related to college basketball, and it won't be a weekly thing or even a daily thing. It'll just be partial, where I talk about college basketball some days, talk to some guests, talk about what next year will bring, memories, all that good stuff. And speaking of that, in terms of a guest, I haven't gotten to it yet, but I probably will for next week's episode because NCAA Bias is the person I'm thinking of contacting. But in terms of that, that was all the general announcements I wanted to make first and foremost. I probably will be ranting for about 20 minutes. I don't know how long this is going to be, but we want to start first of all on the NCAA men's basketball and women's basketball side, Division One. We will have an hour-long episode because this is going to take a long time to unpack. And unpack, I mean, it's been crazy. This college basketball season is winding down. The Super Bowl is coming upon us with the 49ers and the Chiefs, one I'm personally not excited for. I am so sick of Taylor Swift and all the shenanigans that's had to go on with her and her life. We don't care. I want the Niners. I don't care. I'm from Indiana. But am I going to be like, I've not been super excited for this game. If you guys have viewed my TikTok, I am not excited for this. I haven't even posted a single lick of content about it, except for maybe one or two videos about the Lions and Ravens, but that's about it. This Super Bowl I'm not excited for. But you know what I am excited for? March Madness. March Madness. It's the greatest time of the year. Greatest time of the year. It's Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, and Halloween mixed in 1 month. And the first half of April. And then we start, like tonight I'm watching, you guys won't see this because I'm actually audio recording this, softball and baseball will possibly be a show I run this year. I really am interested in college baseball, but we won't get sidetracked on that right now. We've been sidetracked almost the whole week. But let's talk about March Madness, how that's going to be, and then later down the road, I am kind of leading myself into an announcement about baseball and softball coverage, maybe as a podcast form. I'm not for sure yet. Sorry, I was moving around because I'm currently sitting at my desk and I just was moving my chair around and stuff, so no big deal. But that's kind of a preview for that. But anyways, we're getting really sidetracked here. Let's just talk about Division One men's and women's basketball. Starting off with the men's AP poll, we got UConn, Purdue, North Carolina, and Kansas. I think those will probably be the top four teams going into March. We don't know about Kansas's odds, but I do believe from what I've seen this year with the Kansas Jayhawks, they do legitimately feel to me like they're a 4 seed and Houston could be the 2 seed. But North Carolina really is an amazing team right now. I love their performance against Duke. Purdue tomorrow is a big game. As we know, this and we'll get more into Indiana in a minute, but I want to kind of bring a synopsis to tomorrow. Anthony Leal's been on fire, and his story should be talked about a lot more because he's finally getting some playing minutes and finally starting for this team. But will he beat Purdue? Absolutely not. I don't think so. This team, I am not, never have been excited for this team since we got on that losing streak. We just play mediocre, very mediocre bullshit basketball. Sorry to cuss, but it's very mediocre bullshit basketball. This team is terrible that Purdue is facing. This is not an IU squad that in recent years we had hope. Now we're seeing it slip through our fingertips. As fans, it's very frustrating to watch this because you're seeing an Archie Miller team. You're not seeing a post Tom Crean team. Like 2011-12. You're not seeing any of the success of Knight, which he's to this day. It goes to show you we haven't won a title since 1987, and this team it had hope. I still think it has hope, and I think the young guys, when Galloway and them are gone, Khalil Ware, Gabe Cutts are going to step up and really lift some weights, really get to the gym, really start practicing. But Purdue's going to beat them in every level until Zach Edey leaves. And that's probably going to be That's going to probably be the gist of what will be a very saddening senior year. This is my last official basketball season where it's full term, not short term. But this is very much gonna be a lopsided victory for Purdue. I don't see it being an issue for them down the road with their squad. They are playing a very easy schedule to end the year. The only two big opponents I see on here, they're playing Wisconsin, who you have to remember on Sunday, last Sunday, they beat Wisconsin 75-69, and so Purdue's going to play a pretty mediocre Indiana team, as I said. The only good piece about it is Anthony Leal. We're playing trash basketball, and the big thing I say is we cannot hit a mother freaking shot for shit, and I still believe that. And Indiana is going to lose that game. I really do see, and I hate to say it for my Hoosier comrades, but Purdue is going to win. And then they play Minnesota. Easy squad. Ohio State, super easy at Ohio State. Then they're going to play Rutgers on the 22nd. And more on that date in a little bit. And then they got Michigan, a terrible team. They're going to be a 14 squad and lose out of the Big Ten tournament, which is a complete shame for Juwan Howard. He was building the program to be a powerhouse, and these guys were all meant to be powerhouse players until they weren't. And I'm just saying, it's just, I don't know. It's just very mediocre play by Michigan this year. Michigan State, the same thing. You could say the same thing about them, but they're higher in the rankings for the Big Ten. They could maybe go to the semifinals of the Big Ten Conference and maybe make a tournament run if they wanted to. But the two teams, as I mentioned at the bottom, Illinois and Wisconsin, are two of the big opponents I would probably see Purdue face. This Illinois team is changing, and when they beat Indiana, I really saw it change. But Houston is that team in 5. I see them maybe winning a national title. Maybe not. You can never ride on Kelvin Sampson and what he's about to do. You can't even allow teams like it to probably go squeak into the rankings. But I do think, Houston, Kansas, Purdue, UConn, maybe North Carolina, my top tier to win the tournament in terms of ranked opponents. Let's see. Some other interesting notes on here is how in the world is the South Carolina Gamecocks, men's and women's, doing so well right now. Utah State, the same thing. They've been on a 2-game losing streak. But South Carolina and Alabama at 15 and 16 will be a hard match in the SEC tournament, because that will ultimately determine who's going to really get a higher seed in the NCAA tournament. And look at UConn. They're all three of them are 15, 16, and 17 seeds. And I'm saying this is a really dominant defensive South Carolina team. Alabama is not the same without Brandon Miller. It's not the same without some of their big men from last year, but they have firepower. And Kentucky, to me, is going to be another disappointment. Ride this train now, but they won't win the SEC. Out of all these teams, and Iowa State is another team out of the Big 12 that I forgot to mention for the Kansas realm, because they could upset Kansas. And if that's the case, Kansas still gets the one. It just is going to happen, I think. But South Carolina, Alabama, and Kentucky, all three of those teams are super, super good. And all three of those teams, except for Alabama, are probably going to be making big runs in the SEC tournament. But from what I've seen out of South Carolina, defensively they're great. Shooting, they're great. But they still have some flaws. And Kentucky really has some flaws. They've only won one game. And in reality, they're 10-3 in their conference. At the IMET, 10-3 at home, 4-2 on the road. And not only that, but I was able to see that this game against Gonzaga, is going to be a really big opportunity for Kentucky to show some muscle because this Gonzaga team is terrible, but they're also the last four in. It could be the last four in. And that's odd for Mark Few. Very odd, actually. This is an unreal year for Gonzaga. You rode a 30-year run of dominance. And now I would probably say if Mark Few could retire, he can. But we can't see him not go without a national championship. This team this year is very mediocre, to put it lightly. Very disappointing on all levels. But I will say some of their bright spots are their fans and atmospheres. Super packed fan base, super packed team base. San Diego State on this list is another team I wanted to talk about, but Gonzaga to me is a big disappointment. San Diego State, they're so good. Same with New Mexico. Um, those two teams are great. And then if you actually look at the Ken Palm index, San Diego State is not even ranked that high. They're probably ranked, they're ranked 14th, but they're actually 24th in conference play. And then Indiana, I didn't realize this until I looked at the Ken Palm website just an hour ago. Indiana's at 30. Indiana is at 30. I don't know where they're getting this. Oh, wait a second. Oh my god. I can't believe I just did that. I got the wrong one. That's terrible research from my part. My apologies. Um, so I see that was from 2023. Forget what I just said. That was bad research on my part. But I actually did find 2024's Ken Pop, and Indiana is all the way down at, let me see here. Yeah, Indiana is basically all the way down to 96th. They're a terrible team and will probably, as a 7, go all the way to the NIT. But as I mentioned earlier with Anthony Leal, he's been a bright spot, and Trey Galloway, he's also been a bright spot. But yeah, San Diego State on the 2024 one is actually 20th on this list. So they're 20th in the Kim Pop. So to be honest with you, I wouldn't doubt if this team will go back to a Final Four. And I wouldn't doubt if you would want to pick them in their brackets. But yeah, offensively, they're great. Building off the same keys as last year is what I've seen. BYU's been a shocker, too. Who would have ever dreamed, and in post-Jimmer Fredette era, that BYU would have been this good, too. But yeah, Gonzaga and all that, as I mentioned, they've been kind of a dreadful team. But they have them high in the NCAA Ken Palm ratings. But as we talked about Indiana, we'll talk about Indiana State. I've seen more of that team this year than I've seen any other team. That is a great program. Avila is the greatest mid-major shooter I've seen in the modern era. And I think since Fred VanVleet, I haven't seen a shooter like him after that. I think we'll see some great shooters. Connor Hickman's a great shooter. But if you do think about it, this is a very, very unbelievable year that Indiana State's putting up. They have the best offensive team I've seen in a long time. I am not used to good Indiana State teams. If you're from Indiana, you're not used to it. You're used to good Indiana and Purdue teams, but you're not used to good Indiana State teams. Grace College, who has been leading the NAIA, is also actually atop the list as well as an undefeated team as well, but we'll get more on that later because this season's been all about the Indiana, the Indiana States, the Graces, and the Indiana Wesleyans, and then you want to talk about in women's basketball, the IUPUIs, soon to be IU Indy. Terrible wording, terrible choice of words, in my opinion. But Indiana State, offensively, they're shooting lights out, and defensively, they're playing better than I've ever seen them. Their double team against Drake was unbelievable, and they held Drake to so little shots that Villa was on fire with, I think, 30 points in that game. But I will say this has been a very solid run, and all they need, according to all the bracketologists I've listened to and all the people I've chatted with, all they need is to actually win out the semi-state or the semifinals. And maybe if they go to the finals, then that's just going to be an extra level for them. If they can at least go to the semifinals of the Arch, they will probably still make the tournament. There's no reason they wouldn't. And they get a bye, which would really help because they will be the number one seed in the entire mid-major Arch championships, and that is a matchup you need to watch. All those games, the Arch Madness, mid-major conferences, and we're going to get into more of that as soon as the tournament actually comes around because that's very important for me, and we'll have experts' opinions about it as well. But that's very important. Very important to talk about mid-major conferences. That's why we run this show. That's why we run this program. It's called Cinderella Slippers for a reason. We talk about Division One first, but then we trickle our way down to the other basketball that you may not have heard about. And that was our mission for this show this year. But yeah, a lot has happened. But I will say Indiana State, overall, probably one of the best teams that maybe make a Cinderella run. This team is, if they play, though, against a team like BYU or a team like Kansas, they will get eliminated. But other than that, it's just an amazing story. It's an amazing story because Indiana State is not, and recently the baseball team, who I'm also really excited to see this year, that team is going to go far and go places. And I do truly believe that this is an unreal advantage to talk full circle about Indiana State's basketball and baseball teams because they're doing well right now athletically. They're doing really well right now athletically, and this is just a big, big, big boost for not just them but also their program. So coming up next, we're gonna yeah, I forgot to talk about the college basketball games that are gonna be happening for the men's squad. This is gonna be, excuse me, I keep belching, but this is gonna be a big weekend before the Super Bowl. Sunday is the biggest day of them all because Caitlin motherfucking Clark is about to score 39 points plus and go on a tear against Nebraska because I thought to myself, if she's going to make this tear and run against Indiana, I do not know how that would be like. I cannot imagine Caitlin Clark shooting 48 points on the Assembly Hall floor. It will be a bitter fight to the end. And I thought that game with Indiana and Michigan State was one of the best women's basketball games I've seen this year. It was close and it was grinding. I thought that Chloe Moore McNeil did an amazing job in that game. And with the first triple double in like a long time for us. But Indiana women's basketball has the makings of a team that will be like last year. And I see more hope with Scalia and Garzon shooting lights out. Mackenzie Holmes is stepping up more since her injury last season. I will say Grace Berger, something about her could have led us to a national title last year. And even 2 years ago when that team was even in the Elite Eight, they could have easily have won the national title. Easily. And I will say that this Indiana team, and they're playing Iowa on the 22nd, which is the date I mentioned earlier about the Rutgers matchup against, I think I mentioned it was Purdue. And so I'm just saying that this team is awesome. But are they going to be good? Yes. Are they going to make a Big Ten tournament or even be the regular season champs? No. I don't see that. They lost to Iowa big, and they lost to Ohio State big. And they lost to Stanford big time. That's going to hurt them a lot. And this team is not ready for bigger and better competition. I think we overhyped them last year, but last year was a year we had Grace Berger. Grace Berger knew how to play the rock, knew how to play the double team. She knew how to absolutely grill you from Jasper to Martinsville. And that's what I love about Terry Morin. She has actually put Knight back at IU. And this is women's. We need to see this out of the men's more. But as a IU fan, it really pisses me off that the best team is the women's team and the worst team is the men's, because it should be the other way around, or at least it should have, or back then it should have been. But I'm going to say, as we now dive into women's basketball, and then I'll get into the matchups for the men's and women's combined, which are very simple and explanatory, but all these games are happening tomorrow. But I will say, Indiana, this team is not ready for bigger and better competition. I don't see that out of them. I don't see a lot of that side out of them. And I can't wonder how we're going to be playing in the tournament and not lose in the first round. Varied on who we play, varied on what happens, and varied on everything else that's going on. This is a pretty stacked women's basketball league now, with Iowa winning the national championship. I say that because they've only had 2 losses and have not lost since the Ohio State game. But you could make the debate whether Iowa or Indiana is not ready for actual big-time competition. Iowa is, and Indiana is not. And that's to me, just shows you how much women's basketball is now becoming more competitive than the men's. And not only that, but they're becoming ratings-wise a giant. And Indiana packed out their whole stadium last night. And that's used to be a rarity. Now it's not. Now it's a commonplace. Unless it's exhibitions and early season games. But with its Big Ten play, expect it to pack out now. We don't even have to worry about attendance. This will be the largest attendance when we play Iowa. Everywhere Caitlin Clark is gone, she's done wonders. She's a cure. She's a magician. And she's a doctor to a lot of the people of Iowa. This will be a special moment when she takes Kelsey Plum's crown off her head. This is just crazy. She needs 39 points to beat the all-time record in NCAA women's basketball, or possibly men's basketball later. She could do it. She could do it. But you won't see Pete Maravich's record. I hope it's not. Pistol Pete's the greatest. Pistol Pete is the greatest men's and women's basketball, men's or women's basketball player of all time. And for her to break that record would be kind of hard to watch. But I could see it happening. She will need to break a lot of records. Sabrina Ionescu was another one I thought that would. But this Iowa game, all we care about is Caitlin Clark at this point. All we care about. Because this is the modern living walking day version of Michael Jordan. And as I said in a TikTok I made maybe a few months ago, I remember talking about specifically how she can hit shots from so many different angles and from all the way out. And the WNBA is going to be no less of a competition. She'll be outsmarting and outdueling all those people. And we'll get more into the women's basketball probably later when it comes down to draft time, in terms of the WNBA draft and my hopefuls for the top picks and stuff. But I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it right now. I think Caitlin Clark is the best women's basketball player that has played, besides Jackie Stiles. And you don't get how good Jackie Stiles was. If you grew up where you watched the Houston Comets a lot, she was wonders in high school and college. Got into a ton of injuries, but she might as well have been one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Besides Brittany Griner, and I'm not going to get into that. But as I said, Caitlin Clark has some amazing potential to do some amazing things, but please do not break the record at IU. Don't. That will just get us. But in terms of actual scores that are going on right now, Oregon State is leading Utah 49-30. And then Oregon is leading Colorado 39-69. Stanford is leading in the first quarter with 6:16 left. It's 9-0 as the game just started. Arizona is trailing USC, who I think of a great player right now. Probably one of the best players in all of college basketball, and you'll see it later along in her career, maybe even in the NCAA tournament. 9-4 is the score to the first quarter. And then later tonight, Arizona's going to play UCLA at 11 o'clock. And then going into tomorrow and Sunday, we also have some big matchups in women's basketball, mostly on the ranked side of things. The historic matchup on Sunday with Iowa at Nebraska, and then Purdue and IU are playing at 2 p.m. Gotta watch out for traffic when we're actually going back home, because actually this is, I think, one of the first IU Purdue women's basketball games I've seen here in a while. So it's going to be a really packed crowd. Need to tell Mom about that. But UConn and South Carolina is going to be another big matchup as well. And then after that, you got some LSU Alabama matchups going on. Ohio State's playing a dominant Michigan State squad that can make noise in the Big Ten Conference, Big Ten Tournament. And then I think the story of the year has to be TCU. That's the story of the year, as we've dived into a lot of Division One women's basketball. TCU has had 9 of their players injured and have had to, and I think, are going to pull off the greatest Cinderella run in the history of that team's program. This is an extraordinary story. They lost all 9 of their players to injuries, and then they asked for backups to play for them. And where is Haley Cavender? Where is she? We need her right now on that squad. It's just awesome to see that this team is back in rhythm and playing, because we haven't even seen that much even through this year. And it's beyond just the skill of college basketball. It's also beyond the skills of humanity to learn how to problem solve and actually grow up and actually mature more and be more on the side of your players and ask for anyone and everyone to join and participate in this team. But those were some of the big things I wanted to talk about for women's basketball. In terms of men's basketball, tomorrow we are boatloaded with games as well. Wisconsin's going to play at Rutgers, which I do not believe there will be an upset, but we'll see. We can't tell with a team like Nebraska. And then we have St. John's is going to play Marquette at 6 p.m. Eastern. The big matchup out of all this, I think, is probably Baylor and Kansas, then Purdue at IU, but only if IU can beat Purdue, which would be a wonderful thing and boost our ratings a ton. But we would still be a higher seed in the NIT, maybe make the tournament later, but that'll be the only thing that would make the matchup big. Utah State plays a Boise State squad that made noise last year in the tournament. And then you have Arizona, Colorado. That could be upset alert. I'm smelling upsets. Boston College and Duke. Smelling upsets. And then Texas Tech, UCF. I'm not smelling an upset in that one. Auburn, Florida is another ranked matchup that's going to be going on. More matchups to come on Tuesday. And then Iowa State, TCU. Smelling upsets for that one as well. So, that actually does it for men's and women's of Division One top 25 basketball. There is a lot more other basketball that I could mention on this program, but I really wanted to get into some of the specifics about some of these teams. Northwestern is a team I'll be watching out for the rest of this month. UC Irvine, where have they been? They have been one of those teams hidden in the shadows in recent memory. And then, of course, and then not only that, but after they made the NCAA tournament, it felt like the whole world almost forgot about them for a long time. But San Francisco, the Dons, expect them to absolutely make a tournament this year. Don't sleep on Mongolian Mike. Don't sleep on him. I'm telling you that right now. Do not sleep on Mongolian Mike. You will regret it. And not only will you regret it, but you will want to make sure that, hey, you need to make sure that everything's going to go according to plan so that Mongolian Mike and that great offense can actually make noise in the NCAA tournament. So that does it for the men's and women's basketball recap. This is not sponsored by Chapstick. And not only that, but this whole thing, college basketball, it's winding down. If you want to read more, read our newsletters. The link is down in the description wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll probably be airing one day on other platforms as well, but we're mainly doing podcasts as of right now. And we thank you for listening. We're not done yet, though. We are not done yet. As I said, we have an hour-long episode. And I'm talking about a lot of college basketball. A lot of NCAA, a lot of NIA, a lot of Division Two. So I'm just trying to get it done before 11 o'clock tonight because I have other things to do with my life. And then we can actually talk again about college basketball next week as well. So every Friday these episodes come out. Might be late at night, might be early in the morning, and they may be recorded before. But that's just how it is. And sometimes I do live reactions of games, so watch out for that as well. That does it for me about NCAA Division One basketball. We'll be right back after this and talk about NIA and the NJCAA basketball season. What's going on in JUCO right after this?
Sarà perché ti amo, un'emozione che cresce piano piano, stringimi forte, stammi più vicino, se ci sto bene, sarà perché ti amo, e vola vola si cambia, più in alto si va, e vola vola che fa, il mondo è matto perché se l'amore non c'è, basta una sola canzone, per far confusione, le dai propri, e vola vola si va, se più in alto si va, e vola vola che fa, il mondo è matto perché se l'amore non c'è, basta una sola canzone, per far confusione, fuori e dentro di te.
welcome you back to the episode of the Cinderella Slippers podcast. If you want to listen to this in parts, we will be posting part 1 and part 2 on our podcast page, wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple Music, Spotify, wherever you mainly get your podcasts from. That's where we're going to be at. We will be next week maybe talking to a guest or something like that. I haven't even gotten that planned out, as I mentioned at the start of the show. And what you just heard in the audio actually was the new copyrighted instrumental to one of the new songs I wrote called Always By My Side. I'm hoping I can personally release it out to the public around April or May of this year. And it actually talks about my experience in broadcasting, experience in journalism, how that has been. After all that has been amazed and actually dawned upon myself, I view myself as possibly one of the biggest inspirations I've ever had. I thank my mom, my sister, everybody in my support system who has helped me along this journey, which has gone to a few people, but that's completely normal when it ever comes down to women, or when it ever comes down to people in my life. But now, since I'm moving on from a lot of the people in high school, that's what I think about. But yes, part 1 and part 2 is available anywhere you can get your podcast. This is part 2 if you were curious. It starts after the instrumental. So we're actually going to be posting the full part first and part 1 and part 2 for all your enjoyment. If you want to read the newsletters, they are available on substack.com. And if you want to write for Substack, make sure you go to substack.com. And you can start a free newsletter on there. This is not a sponsor, so I want to actually warn that first. I did not get the chance to sponsor this, so there is no sponsor. And I do want to say that all of our other newsletters as well, they're also available on LinkedIn. They're available anywhere you get newsletters, and they should be popping into your email if I put you down as a subscriber, or if you want to subscribe at substack.com or beehive.com. BEEHIV. So now let's go straight to NJCAA and NAIA action, along with some Division Three basketball as well. And one of the very teams I've actually seen very few of, maybe several games this year, Mineral Area and Vincent University are two of the big teams right now in the NJCAA. Knowing Vincent University's luck, that was actually where I went to school at for about a year. I actually went there about a year and a half, but started there, got my journey started there. We see here that they have a 20-2 record, and I've only seen maybe 1 or 2 of their games this year. They look impressive behind the arc. They were previously 6th, and now they've moved up a spot behind Triton. But the team in the defending champs, Northwest Florida State College, I can see them maybe winning the tournament. It doesn't run like the NCAA tournament. It runs completely differently. This tournament is basically designed as more of a whole week instead of a month. It's actually not that comprehensive, but it's also very challenging for teams that are not involved, especially when you're out of the mix. They play in individual tournaments, which I will tell you something right now. I covered those when I was at Vincent's. I was actually a camera operator for the actual broadcast where they broadcasted the games, controlled by one man, and his name was Paul Blair, and he controlled that whole thing all by himself sometimes and asked me to go in and step in. But gosh, it was a spectacle to host and a spectacle to be a part of. But that team was during the COVID year, so there were no fans, none of that, and we didn't really have much going on. The women's team was good, then they got eliminated in the last round of the tournament to go to the NJCAA tournament, and then the men were already out anyway. They were having kind of a mediocre year, but then it got better around the end. But this season it looks like they finally got the tires back on their car, because before they had a 2-year run where it was just nothing but transfers the first 2 years, and nothing but people leaving, failing classes, all that stuff. If you've ever watched Last Chance U, that is the definition of a Last Chance U school. And it's such a shame the show isn't on anymore. Being in all Division One school and actually not seeing that show on, especially for the basketball, it's just wow. I couldn't believe it. Even football, it's not coming back either. It's the greatest show on television. Actually, the greatest show I've ever watched. Um, South Plains is at number one with a perfect 21-0 record with Mineral Area at 23-0. That I do not agree with South Plains being at 21-0. Or at being the number one seed. I think Mineral Area needs to be number one, followed by South Plains, not just for records, but also Mineral Area has been such a great team. They're a great team, and there's nothing more I can say about them because I've only watched one or two of their games this year. It's hard to keep track of college basketball 24/7, but a team that's really shocked me, that's really coming out of the waters late, I'd say Alany Central College, or I'd either say Northwestern Oklahoma A&M College. That's another team that is really dominant right now. But are they as good as these guys up top? I haven't seen much of them, but my best guess is yes. Actually, I could say right now, Mineral Area is a great team. But if Vincent can pull it off again, if they could pull off a national championship like they did in 2019, it'd be the second in school history. Because it'd be the third in school history. Because before that, they were on a 40-year losing streak. And all the great players that came about in those 50 years didn't raise a championship, not even Sean Marion. So it's a big deal. A big deal in those parts. But yeah, I do see NJCAA Division Two circle is also going out of speed right now. Actually, still maintaining a good spot is National Park College, along with Davidson Davie Community College at a 21-1 record. They've been a great team all season long. Let's see here, and then we got South Suburban College at 22-2. Perfect numbers, triple numbers actually. That's very interesting. Then Des Moines area community college is going to be 21-3. Macomb Community College is at 17-3. Kirkwood Community College at 7 is a decent team. I would probably say they're one of the best teams in Division Two right now. And then Bay College is a team that shocked me a lot as well, along with Monroe Community College. Not much to talk about here because I have actually not had the opportunity or even the chance to watch their basketball this year. I'm going off basically the articles that I've read and through stuff I have read in my work before I actually did record this podcast. But Division 3, not much to talk about here in the NJCAA. I will say that not only some of the top commits in all of JUCO are not only going to be special now more because we have players that need to grow up in this new culture of of time and patience and all that stuff. And I do think community college does provide a lot of people with an avenue to go to if they don't have the opportunity to go to another college or can't even get in because of grades and stuff like that. But I will say I am a two-time JUCO transferred from both Vincent University and Ivy Tech. I didn't go there consecutively. I went there separate. So it was Vincent, IU, Ivy Tech, and now back to IU. This is that was my third college in the last 4 years. And I will say that a lot of what Vincent University can do and a lot of JUCO transfers can do, because the top commit right now is Malik at Ewan and Win, and he is from South Plains College. But the one that we do know now is Jeremiah Cherry from in the New Mexico Junior College or something like that. But he's committed to UNLV. But I will say that a lot of these JUCO players will absolutely go on to probably maybe even not play basketball ever again, but it gives them the opportunity to learn and grow, especially as well. But yeah, Division Three men's basketball, I can absolutely see this being Brookdale Community College's year, or either a Dallas College. But in terms of the women's action, which I haven't seen much, but Dodge City is a team that, to me, in the last maybe 3 years, they've built up a great repertoire. Same with Wabash Valley College. They've built up a great repertoire in their coaching and staff, and I do think they could possibly win out of Division One. And then Division Two, a team that really shocks me, just like the Iowa Hawkeyes, there's something brewing at Iowa Western Community College. That whole squad is great. That whole team is good. Rock Valley's undefeated, but they'll probably face them in the championship. That's just a projection I have, not going off of anything other than that. And then at 18 is also Des Moines Area Community College as well. But these rankings have been changing a lot in the last few weeks. But Johnson County still remains number one, which that'll be interesting to see in the NJCAA Division Two Women's. In terms of Division Three, I have actually not seen much of that. Rochester Community College, this looks really bad. This ranking looks really bad. Their best team, at 5, it's 10-10. Their worst team, and that might actually be the worst team on this list. This is pretty mediocre. But this is community college basketball, and you're gonna get the brightest players, but like Owens Community College, just imagine if they won a state championship with that ranking. They're very lucky to be in that ranking too. It shows you how unceremoniously bad they actually are in Division Three. But we can't criticize that. This is an all college basketball podcast, and I want to keep it a level playing field. But that's how I've thought about it for a few years. In terms of NAIA, in terms of the men, it's actually been a really exciting time for Indiana Wesleyan. They are actually the looks like they're the number 8, no, actually number 10 seed in this conference. They're on a hot streak right now. They've got 20 wins, 3 losses, and have won the last 2 games, or won the last 3 games. Grace College in Indiana is actually doing an incredible job right now. Grace College is in Winona Lake, Indiana. And that team actually, I believe, might have been the team that Anthony Edwardson had such an amazing game in 2007, but I think it was called a different name at the time. But the NAIA, this is basically a one-man show. It's Grace, Indiana. They've won the last 23 games and could go undefeated. And Indiana Wesleyan, they're doing great, but they're, as I said, not as good as Grace, Indiana. They're on fire right now. Same with a lot of these other teams as well. Another team I could say that I've watched this year is probably Southwestern. They have a 19-3 record. And Florida College. Florida College is a decent team. They will be likely to be true Cinderellas. And in terms of women's in AIA, this is actually pretty outdated. I don't know. It says on here, it says December 13th. But this is the only ranking I could find. Iowa, goodness me, in women's basketball, I've been doing really well. You talk about the 2 NJCAA schools I just mentioned in Division 2 and in Division 1 for women's basketball. Want to talk about another great women's basketball team, Dort, D-O-R-D-T. They actually are the number 1 ranked team in all of NAIA women's basketball, along with Indiana Wesleyan, who are having an incredible year. Same with IUPUI, same with Indiana University. Purdue could be making a big run in the tournament, so it's actually a really exciting time right now. And Indiana Tech is actually number 25th at 8-1 on this list. So this again is from December. This is not from now. I will probably provide a link to more information about those rankings as well. But yeah, I just said a lot of these teams, I do look forward to seeing them in their tournament, and I look forward to seeing them play in the near future. Not only that, but it's really hard to keep track of every single college basketball that's going on. So I'm doing my best with all the research that I actually concocted and actually dug up from other websites and stuff like that. So that does it for us on the Cinderella Slippers podcast on February 9th, 2024. Again, make sure you subscribe to our newsletter on the Substack website, or Beehive, Beehiv, and then actually go on there, and we will have newsletters come out. What is usually every Tuesday and Thursday will now probably be daily, but we're still figuring that out, varied on my schedule and stuff. We may hire a writer, so if you actually are interested in writing, email me, and I will provide you the email as soon as you contact me on Instagram at Braydyn, Braydyn, 98.5 AM FM, and that's all you have to do. So that actually does it for us. Thank you so much for listening. I know it's been a long time since we made an episode. That is my fault. I probably should have not even had the time to make one this week, but we had a lot happen in my family and a lot happen in my neck of the woods. So that actually puts a reminder off my reminders list that I recorded a podcast today. So thank you so much for listening, and remember, ball hard and ball young. Have a good one, and thanks for listening.
This episode was from the Braydyn Bear Podcast Network.